This week we're going to be discussing the concept of lashon hara. Very complicated topic. You know, the ethics of speaking slander seems pretty simple. Don't talk bad about others. But we all know there's always a gray area. You know, we know slander is not good, but in certain situations, it's not clear what to do. You know, if someone accuses you for doing something wrong and you know someone else did it, are you allowed to say that Mr. So-and-so did it? If someone cheated you, are you allowed to tell your friend that wants to do business with him, don't do business with him because he's a cheater? Or that's called lashon hara. Or because you're saving him, you're allowed to say it. Let's see what the Torah says on this point of view, when you could say lashon hara to protect yourself or protect others and so on and so forth. So let's see. We see here in text number 1, Yitzchak was getting old and he wanted to bless his son. He loved more Esav. Now Yitzchak loved Esav and Rebekah loved Jacob. When they grew up, Yitzchak wanted to bless Esav. But before he blessed him, wanted him to do a mitzvah. So he told his son, I'm practically blind. Go bring me food from outside. And when Rivka heard this, that Esav wants to get the blessings, she said it's not good because Jacob's the one that deserves the blessings. So she prepared food. She put him on a beautiful furry garment to get him ready to go straight to Jacob. So she prepared the food. She put him on this beautiful fur coat. And she told Jacob, go to Esav and get the blessing. You know, we know that older people turn blind. And it's pretty usual for elderly people to get blind. But here it says that Yitzchak got blessed from Hashem to have long life. So is that long life that at 57 of his years, he's going to be blind? What kind of long life is that if his last 57 years he was blind? Because he lived till 180 and he was blind from 123. So there's several explanations on this. And if you look at text number 2, the main explanation is that he got the blessings, that he became blind in order that Jacob should get blessed. Because if Isaac wasn't blind, he would bless Esau. If Yitzchak would have been able to see, Rivka would have never been able to do her trick. And Esau would have received blessings. Even though Hashem blessed Isaac with long life, he made him blind in order that Jacob should get the blessings. But wait a minute. Couldn't Hashem tell Isaac that Esau is not a good candidate for the blessings? Yitzchak would have definitely listened to God. Why make a guy blind for 57 years of his life? So the Rebbe reflects on this here in text number 3, and the Rebbe explains as follows. We have to be so careful from speaking slander. Yitzchak was 57 years stuck in his house like in prison in order not to say slander about another person. God made sure not to tell Isaac bad about his son, not to say lashon hara. So if Hashem was careful not to say lashon hara, slander about someone that was a sinner, we have to most definitely be careful not to say lashon hara about people that are Jewish after God gave the Torah. Now, let's try to explain, why is slander so bad? Why is it so bad to talk negative about other people? Let's discuss this a little. We know you hear it all the time. Lashon hara is very bad. So we're going to speak about two things. As a community, and it also harms the person that you are speaking about. Rabbi Jonathan Sachs writes in this text over here, great rabbi, chief rabbi of England, he says, you ruin a community because humans have speech, which is the advantage over animals. We trust each other. But when I talk bad about you, or you talk bad about me in a group, we lose trust for each other. Lashon hara undermines trust. It brings suspicion from one to the other. It breaks the bond of the group. It uses the power of language to weaken the very thing language was brought into being to create. Mainly the trust that sustains the social bond. Now let's talk about something more personal. The Alter Rebbe says in the name of the Baal Shem Tov, and the verse it says, Lo sisa shema shav, right here, text number 4b. You should not say Lashon hara. In addition, it says, you shouldn't go with a friend to say false witness about another person. The Baal Shem Tov tells us, witness is like Lashon hara. Don't join your wicked evil inside you. Don't join yourself, your Yetzer hara inside you, to rob the next person from being a good person. Think, you know what? I say bad about somebody else. No one knows about it. It doesn't do anything to him. But spiritually, it builds waves. It drains the victim's spiritual strength from becoming a better person. Even if you listen or you believe what you heard about somebody else. Because everyone has positive traits and everyone has negative traits. God gives us more positive to overweigh the negative. When other people speak negative, it strengthens the negative. So you're weighing down the negative of the other person. It drains the positive. And this is two reasons. Psychologically, when you talk bad about somebody else and he's out about it, could you imagine how he feels? He feels worthless. And also mystical, when you give strength in the physical world of speaking negative about others, it's like throwing away all the positive. But wait a minute. If Hashem tells Yitzchak that Esav is bad, is that Lashon hara? It's almost like if I tell B bad on A in order that B shouldn't do business with A. What's wrong with that? I tell John bad about Jacob, so John shouldn't do business with Jacob. Hashem could have told Yitzchak bad about Esav, that he shouldn't bless him, and he should bless Jacob. What is so bad about that? So let's strengthen the question and then we'll answer it. We're trying to understand, why would God make Jacob Isaac blind for 57 years, he could have told him clearly that Esav is a bad person and it's not Lashon Hara. Well, we're going to strengthen the question and then we'll come to an answer. It says in the Torah, in text 5a, Lo selech Rachel. Do not walk about as a peddler. Wait a minute. What's wrong with a peddler? Actually, one of the sages, Ezra, made a rule that you could have peddlers able to make a living and travel from town to town. Well, there's another explanation in Rachel, which is gossiping. So leselech Rachel means do not go around and gossip. What does gossiping mean? You go around and you say, oh, you know my neighbor? He just bought a Tesla. You know my neighbor? I just saw him coming in with his wife from a vacation. That is not bad, but it's gossiping about others. Now, of course, if you say bad about someone else, that's for sure a sin. But you shouldn't even talk good and gossip about what other people are doing. If your neighbor bought a Tesla, or if your neighbor came back from a vacation, it's no one's business. Now, that's gossiping. For instance, you say, this family has a cash business. Some people might think you're trying to say that they try to avoid taxes and they cheat the government. But that's not what you meant. You just meant that they have a cash business. Well, stop talking so. The second thing is slander. You speak bad about something that's going on in someone else's house. That's for sure sinful, even if it's true. Now, even if you're blamed for a fault, you're not allowed to say that the other person is at fault. We see in the Gemara a story that one of the rabbis asked his son, who wrote this document? And those days they would write a document on parchment and then they would fold it and they would sew it up with string to protect it so no one should make a fraudulent activity on that document. So there was a mistake in the document. It was actually missing a date. So Rabbi Shimon asked his son, who wrote this without a date? Or why isn't there a date? So Rabbi Shimon said, Rabbi Yehuda wrote it and there's no date. So his father said, stay away from Lashon Hara. Even though he was protecting himself. If the IRS comes to you and asks you why you didn't pay your taxes, say it wasn't me that didn't pay my taxes. It was my neighbor. Now you protect yourself, but you're putting bad on someone else. Even if you're going to suffer, you should not say that someone else did it. Say, I didn't do it, and that's it. More so we see here in text number 7. We see here, it was one of the rabbis was giving a lecture in the yeshiva in the times of the Talmud, and it smelled really bad from garlic. So the rabbi asked, who ate garlic? So Rabbi Chia, one of the sages, got up and left. So everyone got up and left. Basically, he wanted to take the blame, so the rabbi shouldn't accuse anyone else for being the one to eat the garlic. Even though he didn't do it, he took the blame. And we know many stories like this where people took the blame in order not to accuse others. Now, even if you're saying what someone else did, you should still not say their name. Look at a perfect example. After the Jewish people went through the river with Joshua and they succeeded in capturing their enemies, there was one nation that they could not capture. And Joshua went down on the floor and kissed the floor and said, God, why did you bring us into Israel if we cannot capture the Amoraim, which was one of the nations? God said, because there's one person amongst you that has sinned. How to identify the sinner. So Yeshua told God, why do I have to identify the sinner? Why don't you tell me who the sinner was? So God said, I am not a gossiper. I don't know who did it. So even though this one person harmed the entire Jewish nation, he was not willing to say gossip. But God told him how to identify. And the same thing by us. You could tell the victim that there's somebody trying to get him, but don't say who it is. But there's an exception to the rule. If something's about to happen, and A is about to kill B, you have to tell B that A kill him and give him his name, so either you could report him to the police or he could protect himself from him. That is different. If you're going to help protect the other person, then it's allowed. Now, number 4. If someone tells you, do not do business with Reuven because he's a cheater, do you have to listen and rely on him that Reuven is a cheater, or you don't have to listen to him? What do you think? Should we listen or not listen? Well, it depends, obviously. If you want to listen and you know that this guy is a cheater, you really want to be careful from him. But let's see what text number 11 there. Rava says, maybe don't do business with him, but don't think about it and don't continue talking. With him, you don't have to harm yourself. So according to this, God had full permission to tell Isaac that Esau is a bad person. He's not a candidate for the blessings. Not only it's not forbidden, but God has an obligation. So according to this, our question is even stronger. Why would God make Isaac blind for 57 years when he could have told Isaac that Esau is not a candidate for the blessings? It's not Lashon Hara according to this, because he's saving Isaac from doing the wrong thing. So what's wrong with it? Well, 2 ways in not speaking Lashon Hara. Okay. Number 1, let's say you have a friend. His name is Reuven. And he happens to be not a very good person. Now, first of all, you have to resist from saying gossip about him. Not only that, look for his good. Talk good about him. Go to your friends and talk good about him. And by the way, that's very healthy also. It's healthy for your anger and your emotions to talk good about him. As it says here in text number 12, it's a mitzvah to love every Jew. Naturally, we like to talk good about people we love. We like to magnify their good. You like to speak good about your siblings, about your children, about your parents, and overlook their faults. If you love every Jew, then you will definitely not go talk about bad about anybody, because they're like your family. You will definitely speak good about them. To speak good about someone else is not only to show that they're good, but it actually helps them. As the Rebbe explains in text number 13, it helps them become better people when you talk good about them. It brings out their good. To highlight their strengths. But how could we deal with their faults? When we see people we love that are doing bad things, how are we supposed to deal with it? Should we ignore it? We have to do something. If your friend that you love did something inappropriate, you shouldn't do something about it? Well, here comes a fascinating statement. Text number 14. Don't judge others. If you would be in the same situation, maybe you would also sin. Don't speak bad about others because maybe they have bigger challenges than you. Maybe the guy's working in a store And there's people coming in and out all the time, and it's very challenging. So don't judge them. Maybe they have challenges that you don't have. And if you have those challenges, you might sin worse. So in other words, first of all, you love them and don't judge them in their situation. But it all sounds very nice. The problem is as follows. How should I throw away their faults and highlight their good? How is that going to help them? If I have a family member that's doing bad, how is it going to help them? How is it going to help them if I just keep on talking good about them? Wouldn't it be better to speak to them about their faults and not to cover it up and elaborate on it? The answer is as follows. The Rebbe explains a fascinating idea. When you speak about their challenges, it helps them overcome their faults. And I'll explain to you why. Our sages say, Hashem does not give us more than we could handle. So if you're having struggles and you're having challenges, whether it's spiritual, whether it's physical, and you think it's more than you can handle, God will only give you as much as you can handle, as much as you can overcome. Before we were born, God gave us all the strengths to overcome our challenges. When we have more challenges, when we have more challenges, it means we have more strength. We have more strength that you never imagined you have. You know, God forbid someone is in a very dangerous situation and he has so much power to break down the wall that under normal circumstances, he would never be able to do. When you're having struggles to serve God, you have this inner strength that you never realize you have. Now, when others speak about your challenges, they reveal your strength. A true Jew does not see the sin in others. He only sees challenges. And a truer Jew only sees his strengths. A gentleman went by back in the 90s, in the early 80s, and the Rebbe and he told the Rebbe that I'm about to marry a non-Jewish woman. What should I do? The Rebbe told him, I am jealous of you, because the fact that you have such a challenge means you have stronger strengths, meaning God gave you the strength to overcome it. So your strengths are stronger than mine, the Rebbe said, because I don't have that challenge. When the man heard these words, it touched him. It touched his heart forever. And he broke up the relationship forever. The Rebbe did not see a sinner. He saw someone with a great challenge. He saw the strength of his soul to stand against it. When the Rebbe saw it, he uncovered his strengths. Yitzchak saw Esau, his son, like a Torah scholar. That's how he looked at his son. He saw another Jew who was not oblivious to how Esau behaved, but he saw his potential. He saw his deeper strengths. Yitzchak believed that if he blesses Esau, he will uncover his power that's deep inside. It's not a regular circumstances, because Isaac saw the good in Esau. Isaac saw the source and he wanted to bless him. But God saw that this blessing is going to go to waste. That's what God saw. He didn't tell Isaac because it's Lashon Hara. Because in the potential, he could have really been good, but that wasn't the case. Therefore, It's a little different if a rich man wants to give a poor man $5 and you tell him, don't give him the $5 because he's going to buy drugs. That's Lashon Hara. Because first of all, you're never sure. And maybe he won't buy the drugs. But if a rich man goes around to collect money, and we all know he has a lot of money, and he just wants to swindle another rich man, then you're allowed to say that this guy is rich. Because the only way you could avoid the rich person from helping the other rich person is if you say the truth. God had to avoid the blessing from going to Esav. He had to do something drastic. He had to make Isaac blind. Yitzchak was a tzaddik. For him, he'd rather be blind for 57 years than God say Lashon Hara about his son. Could you imagine? A blind person is almost like dead. But he was ready to do that in order not to have Lashon Hara be said about his son. And by the way, Esav also benefited. Because when the blessing went to Jacob, Jacob was able to influence Esav. But if the blessing would have gone to Esav, it would have been wasted. So here we see how important it's to talk gossip about others. We started the class with 2 questions. If people accuse you for doing something bad that you did not do, but someone else did it, are you allowed to say the truth? And number 2, are you allowed to tell someone that's trying to do business with someone else that he's a liar and don't do business with him? Well, according to what we said before, you're allowed to say you didn't do anything wrong, but don't say who did it. And if your friend wants to do business with so-and-so, you have to tell him, protect himself from doing business with the other person. But you should always try to talk that good about others. When you good about him, it uncovers his strengths. Even if you're speaking about his bad, speak about it under these circumstances. He definitely has the strength to deal with it and overcome it. If God gave him the challenge, he gave him the strength. And more so, if the challenge came today, that's a sign that he has new strengths today. It means he came into such a situation to the next level to overcome the challenges and bring out new strengths. If you're going to speak positive, we'll have less chance to speak negative. And when prove and talk good, make this world a better place. And by the way, talking less is even better. It says, Pirkei Avot, Siag lachachma shtika. The boundaries of an intelligent man is keeping his mouth shut. Because when you talk, and you talk too much, leads to slander, and it leads to inappropriate conversations. So this is why Hashem did not tell Isaac that Esav is bad, because he didn't want to say Lashon Hara about Esav. He rather make Isaac blind for 57 years in order not to bless Esav. More so by us, we have to stay away from the Lashon Hara. Any questions?
Hi, Rabbi. So is the opposite of Loshen Hara Loshen Tov when you say something good? Because sometimes saying something bad, it could be perceived as bad, but it's actually good. If somebody's on drugs, you can either be supportive of them or you can have like tough love. And you have to be a little bit tough, but I'm doing this for your own good. And I think also in life, sometimes people regret, why didn't I say something? Rather than,
if you have the ability to rebuke someone, you should absolutely rebuke them in a loving, caring way. Not like some people, I caught you. People that are already not on good terms, they'll look for something and say, I got you. That's not caring about others. But if you really love, especially with our children, when you love your children and they do something wrong, you're constantly looking to help them improve because you love them, care about them. Yes, and you have to rebuke and you have to open your mouth out of love.
Yeah, isn't it a little bit subjective also? So in other words, if somebody did amazing things, right, and they gave to charity, but they gave anonymously because they don't want the attention. And if you want to then praise that person and say, oh, he's so modest, but that's like Goshen Hara, even though you're saying something positive. Maybe he didn't want the attention. That's why he gave anonymously.
Right.
He wants to be under the
Right.
radar.
Good point. So by you even bringing it up.
Right. But
there was once years ago, there was these Hasidim that got together and they said, this is a group for humble people. There you go. They just killed the whole group. If the group's for humble people and everybody's gathering together to be humble, the humbleness is gone. They're all talking about each other's humbleness. You're not humble.
Yeah, so I think it's the intent in your heart if you want to say something positive, because sometimes it's like, oh, I wish I would have said something, and you never did.
Right.
It's a compliment, and you hear these stories, like especially in cities, people living in an apartment building, they don't get to know their neighbors, they don't say anything.
Right.
And sometimes just a kind word, hello, is something good. So I think there's boundaries. Sometimes it crosses it. I think it's with the intent, but sometimes people do need recognition, but you want to do it in such a way not to embarrass them. But sometimes people don't get praised for what they do, and I work my whole life, nobody says anything nice to me. So
look at the first chapter of Tanya quoted from the Gemara. It says that you should not, if you see someone doing something wrong and you don't rebuke them, you're liable for the sin just like they are. So that's pretty heavy.
But is there more devoted to Loshen? In other words, I would think there'd be things devoted to whatever it's called, Loshen Tov, how to say good things, not so much what. There's enough about how you say bad things, but why shouldn't there be ways of like how to say good things, how to recognize positive things, reinforcing good things, but in a way that's not insulting or doesn't embarrass the person that you're saying. Because sometimes people that do things are modest. They don't want all the attention, but sometimes they deserve something. But I would think more should be devoted to the Loshen Tov part. And how do you handle that?
Yeah, and when you say good about others and you give them a compliment, it builds them to do even more.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So next time we want to say Lashon Hara, think about Isaac's blind for 57 years to avoid saying Lashon Hara about a sinner. You're talking about Esav. He wasn't a very good person.
And the final thing, so if Loshen Hara is like warning somebody, hey, watch out, it's not Loshen Hara anymore, it becomes a positive thing. So is that called something else? If you're saying it for a good thing, that's dangerous. You're not wanting to take away somebody's business.
Well, it's still called Lashon Hara because the bottom line is you're saying bad about somebody. But the only thing is you're allowed to say bad about someone.
But then if it's good, it's not really bad.
Well, you're not saying anything good. You're just, it's like, God forbid, someone has to kill someone else to protect himself. Now, did he do something good? Well, he did protect himself, but the bottom line is he killed someone. So, All right. Okay, sei gesund, everyone. It's great to see you all. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.